Recorded that first killer YouTube video, and now you need a killer thumbnail to go with it? How about for free? You, my friend, have come to the right place. Today, we'll be making a thumbnail in the free image program Gimp. Now, you will need a thumbnail picture before we actually do begin this. You can take a picture behind like a blank wall with nothing else and maybe a little bit of space in frame if you want to drag on other assets for it, or you can just take a picture in your computer chair. But if you do plan on having other things on screen, it's a good idea to leave a little bit of space on whichever side. I always do the left side. Here's how to make eye-catching thumbnails in Gimp. So I'll leave a link in the description down below, but basically you just go Google Gimp and then you're able to download it. Now, once you're all installed and ready to go ahead and double click on it to open, and it should look something like this. The first thing you're gonna wanna do is hit Control N, and that'll let you create a new image. I've already set this to 1280 by 720, but yours might be 1920 by 1080. Go ahead and set it to 1280 by 720 because that is the size for a YouTube thumbnail. And then under advanced options here, you can change the fill. It might be set to foreground or background color, but we want to set it to transparency, and then you'll go ahead and click OK here. Now you can go ahead and drag in the picture that you plan to use for your thumbnail. Here we go. And it's going to come in way too big. Don't worry about that. The first thing we're going to do is resize it. You can go ahead and hit Shift S, and that'll bring up the scaling options. Scale it down until it's about the right size for the actual canvas here. You can use this little middle button to actually reposition it. I am going to make it a little bit bigger than our actual canvas, and you'll see that it basically gets cut off. And then when you're all done, you can press Enter, and it'll actually squish down basically into the size of your actual frame. We do want to actually cut out our subject, in this case my big dumb face here, because I want to adjust the lighting, and I want to adjust the contrast, and I want to adjust a couple other things on just my face. So let's go ahead and do that. Go up here to the top left, and I already have it set on the cut tool, but it might be set to free select. So you can left click and hold, go to scissor select, or you can hit the I key, whichever one's easier for you. And then we're basically going to start putting on points to cut this person out. You're also going to see me scrolling in and out here. So you'll see me use Control and the scroll wheel to scroll in and out. You'll see me using Shift and the scroll wheel to pan left and right, respectively. And then also you'll see me using just the normal scroll wheel itself on the mouse to go up and down. That's how you can quickly navigate the photo without having to use your arrow keys or using these slower scroll bars. You're going to want to zoom in here so that you can get a little bit more precision, and then you can start adding in points. Just left click and it adds a point. And so we'll just keep on adding points here. We'll just keep on going. I tend to go a little bit more towards the outside so that I can capture more stuff, because for some reason it likes to err more towards the inside. Go figure. Beards can be a little hard to cut, so we're just going to zoom in here a little bit. Keep on rolling along. Now don't worry, yes, I know it looks a little wavy. Don't worry about that. We're going to use a drop shadow to effectively hide that hard edge. And if you mess up like I did here, you can hit Control Z, and that'll back you up, that'll undo you on one step, and then you can keep on cutting. Now you do want to make sure that anti-aliasing and feather edge are turned on. That will make the actual edge a little bit softer when we actually go to cut this thing out. Turn on some tunes. Pour yourself a drink, relax a little bit. This can be, like I said, this can be a little time consuming, but I promise you the efforts will absolutely be worth it. All right, so we're getting kind of close to the end here. I did want to show you kind of the final steps here. So once you've got most of your image cut out here, go ahead and come to this actual corner. And then you can click back to that first point to close it off. And then once you've got everything selected that you want, hit the Enter key, and then that will actually highlight your selection. And look at that, the feather has done its job. Now, if you're not happy, you can go back and add some more points here, but I'm pretty happy with this cutout. So we can go ahead and hit Control C to copy. Go ahead and go over here. You can hit Control Shift N to create a new layer, and then all the default stuff is fine. We can just leave that as is. And then Control V to actually paste it onto a floating layer. And then down here, you can create a new layer and add it to the image. And now you have the actual pasted layer of your face. Now you'll see some spots that are not perfect here. Sometimes I will go back in with the eraser tool, you can press E, And I might fix like some small parts here that like just didn't cut correctly for some reason. And then if there's anything else that you want to fix here, I would go ahead and do it on this layer first. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to add a drop shadow, and you'll see small details like down here where you pick up some of the background, but that's not a huge deal because you're basically going to be viewing the thumbnail from like way back here, especially on mobile. I probably want to turn up the contrast a little bit, maybe brighten up the shadows a bit. We'll go from there. Make sure that your new layer is actually selected here because that's the one that we're trying to edit. Now you can go into colors, you can go to brightness contrast, and I might bring the contrast up a little bit because coming out of the camera, I actually have it under contrasted for editing and post. And then for the brightness, it's pretty close to what I want, so I might pull it down a little bit to see and pull it up a little bit to see. The brightness is about where I want it without having to touch the exposure. Now we can go back into colors at the top here, and then we can go over to saturation, and I might turn up the saturation by a little bit because I do kind of want to make that blue headband pop out a little bit more. Maybe bring out a bit in the eyes, the actual blue in the headband, and a little bit of the color in the eyes. Wow, they're actually green and brown. You actually can bring up the shadows a little bit just to make your subject pop a little bit more. I like doing this for thumbnails because when you actually, like I said, when you actually see a thumbnail, it's way out here. So we can bring the shadows up just a little bit to make your actual face pop more. So we can go into colors here, go into shadows and highlights. And this one also doesn't need like a whole bunch. You can also double click in here. If you know the exact value that you want, you can just type it in just like that. The one thing that I am going to change though is the color temperature. Now the actual, like my main key light that I'm shooting with, I actually do shoot it at, oh, that is not correct. I shoot it at 5600 Kelvin. So when I actually bring it to 5600K, wow, look at that. It actually brings the skin tone back in. So before and afterwards, it looks like my real life skin is back. And I'm pretty happy with that being like our main image manipulation. You can push that part as far as you want, but I'm pretty happy here. Now the next thing that we're gonna do here is we're gonna actually add a drop shadow. So at the very top here, you can go to filters, and then you can go to light and shadow, go to drop shadow. And these default options are actually pretty good. What I am gonna do is change the color to white to give myself a little bit more pop off the background without introducing too much color because I've already got the blue headband. Now, if you do have like a particular channel color or anything like that, or like a brand color, you can actually change the color to that if you want like a colored background. And then I'm gonna take the opacity down to 90, just a little bit so that it has a little bit of pass through to the actual background. And then like that, you've got a drop shadow. Gimp is actually pretty awesome for being free. Another awesome thing, liking the video. It helps the channel a ton. And hey, likes are free too. Now, let's go fix that background. Now let's go ahead and switch layers by clicking back to your base layer. We can go ahead and go back up to the top here, go to filters, go to blur, go to Gaussian blur, and then from here you can adjust the actual amount. This also does not need very much. Like see, you could blur it out way too much. I did not even mean to go extreme there. If for some reason you wanted like your actual, like there's too much stuff going on in the background, you can blur it out 100%. Somewhere between like 5 to 8 is what I normally go with because it's good to have like some other like elements in the background to give you a little bit of depth. Now you can go ahead and click OK here. You don't really need to mess with too many other options. And there you go. Your background's all blurry. Now next up is your on-screen assets. This includes stuff like logos or like any kind of graphical thing, basically what you want to appear on the thumbnail. Now in our case, I know that this is a video about making thumbnails in Gimp, so I probably want to use the Gimp logo, right? So I'll go ahead and pull up the Gimp logo in a PNG. You do want these in PNG because that way, when you actually pull them in, I'm just clicking and dragging here. When you actually pull them in, then they won't have a background, and that is way too big. So same thing, we're gonna go ahead and hit Shift S on this. I kind of want it like right there because we're also going to put some text. So I'm leaving space for text here. I do think this would look good if we rotated it a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Go ahead and hit Shift T to bring up your transform. And maybe we'll spin it this way. That seems to be the fun option. And there we go. I think that's approximately where we want them. Now next up is your actual letters. So you can hit T, or you can click up here at the top for the actual text tool. I've already got my font selected. This is Baby's Kai because it's very readable. You can click the actual font button here and then scroll through all the fonts that are available. I'm not quite sure what Gimp has by default because I have so many fonts. Now, once you have a font that you like, you can go ahead and click it back onto the actual image. And let's say I want this to say Gimp. like that. Probably want the letters to be white, so I'm going to hit Control A to select all, or you can just click and drag. And now my letters are white, but they're way too small. We can go ahead and change the sizing here. Let's start with maybe 250. Not quite big enough. Maybe 350 just to see. Okay, 350 is kind of big. We'll split the difference with like 325, I think. So once you've got a size that you're happy with, you can hit the M key, or you can just click the move tool here, and you can scoot it around, see where you kind of like it. But the kerning is a little bit off, and it's also on the wrong layer. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna pull it underneath here so that it actually kind of sits behind the Gimp logo for a little bit of depth. And I'm gonna go ahead and switch back to that text tool, left click to select into it. And then to change the sizing in between the letters, or what's called kerning, you can go ahead and click here on this little caret until it's about the right kerning. And then I did go ahead and scoot our little dog friend logo. This is a silly little logo. I did scoot that down a little bit back behind the hand. So now with your Gimp layer selected, we're gonna add, hey, a drop shadow to this too. Drop shadows are great. Go back up to filter, light and shadow, drop shadow. This one I am literally going to leave with just the default black, because really I think the default looks fine. Don't have to mess with anything else. We can click OK here, and white text with a black background works on pretty much everything. Now, for one last finishing touch, we're gonna do a little bit of a fun color gradient. This is an optional step, but I think it's great for stylizing your videos. Go ahead and click on your base layer, and then you can hit Control-Shift-N for another new layer. And yes, you should probably name your layers. Sometimes I don't. And then on the top left, it's probably gonna have the bucket fill selected by default here. So you can go up to the top here, left click and hold, that lets you select your alternate tools that are in the same slot, and go to gradient, or you can just hit G on your keyboard for gradient. And I've already got the colors selected out that I want, but if you have a color that your channel specifically uses, you can just click into it, and then you can change the actual HTML notation of it. So if there's like a hex code that you specifically like, you can go ahead and put in that color here. Otherwise, you can pick it from your actual color picker. Or if you want to use some kind of color wheel for some reason, you can absolutely do that too. I'm gonna leave it as blue because I've already got my color selected. And then go ahead and change your opacity to about 60%. I find that somewhere in the range of 50 to 70 works best for doing this color gradient. On your actual layer here, all you need to do is click and drag a diagonal line, and it'll show you, what's cool is it'll show you in progress kind of like what it looks like. So you can drag it all the way out to see what the colors would look like, or you can drag it a little bit shorter. I like kind of the fade over onto the other side of my face, so we're gonna do it that way. And then once you have your line where you like it and you actually like the gradient, hit enter, and that'll drop in your gradient. And look at that, you just created a killer thumbnail. This is pretty good overall. I might go back in with an eraser and like touch up the beard a little bit. Beards are notoriously hard to cut, by the way. Woohoo, we did it. Now, as always, experiment with these different techniques though. Now that you know the base of how to do it, you can really push it really high up or high down and see the difference in sizes or the difference in lighting to find a style that you like. If you found the video useful, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and join the Squid Squad. We got fun little squid guys like this. It's pretty good, right? And if you want even more misguided editing and video creation tips, go ahead and check out this video right here. This one. Yep, that one right there. Go ahead and click it.